Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help. Thanks for doing that. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we're talking with special guest Frank DeMartini. Graduated from Touro College, Long Island, following undergraduate work at Syracuse, and from 1986 to 1997, he practiced law in Hollywood in both the commercial and entertainment fields. He became a specialist in representing not only the above-the-line elements, such as actors, writers, producers, and directors, but also aspects of motion picture and TV production from development through financing and distribution. The transition to movies was rapid, and after serving as associate producer on 3 independent features, he took the plunge and produced Motel Blue, 1997, starring Sean Young and Robert Vaughn. He went on to produce 21 more features to date, including Mozart and the Whale in 2005 with Josh Hartnett. Due to its positive portrayal of Asperger's syndrome and other autism spectrum conditions, his movie has been frequently screened at autistic conferences and support group meetings for those on the spectrum. Screenplay by Ron Bass, who also wrote Rain Man, 1988. Next up, Mad Money, 2008 with Diane Keaton, BET nominee for Best Actress Queen Latifah and Katie Holmes, and the Jason Statham, Jessica Alba, and Academy Award winner Tommy Lee Jones Mechanic Resurrection in 2016. With an international take of over $125 million, the sequel actually did better than its predecessor, thanks to Frank. Hello, how are you today, sir?
Actually, that was thanks to the Chinese market, which was really, really big when we did the sequel, but not when we did the first one.
Hey, whatever it takes. The cash register rings, right? They pay in greenbacks. That's fantastic.
I think the Chinese box office was about 50% of the worldwide box office on that movie.
Wow. Well, back then, that was actually sort of a pioneering spirit, right? 2016, we were just breaking in. So you were present at the creation, as we say. And we're going to talk a lot about that because even though the headline says your movie is Old Man, you have been around Hollywood a while and have seen a lot. And so we're going to talk about it. So you're in LA, right?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. Just to be a little more specific, Old Man, I was an executive producer on. I didn't actually produce that or wasn't on the set. All of my other movies, I was pretty much on the set, including Reagan, which you haven't mentioned.
Yes, that's true. Well, why don't you actually distinguish for us the difference between a producer, which sometimes there are 14, 15 on a film, and an executive producer?
A producer, for the most part, is around and involved with the movie from the idea inception until the release and distribution of the movie, including developing the screenplay, hiring the director, hiring the actors. An executive producer usually comes in during the financing stage and is pretty much not involved at all until the movie is basically involved in the business aspect of the movie and not the creative aspect of the movie, to make it as simple as possible.
We talking about like starting the stopwatch on the dailies to make sure that they don't go over budget in terms of payment for folks, or like how exclusive, when does the producer get out of the way and the executive producer take over?
The producer never gets out of the way. The producer is technically the boss.
The boss, okay.
The credit executive producer came from the old studio days as the person executive in charge of production, who was the studio executive in charge of that particular movie, not as opposed to the producer who was on the set every day physically making the movie.
I see. Okay. And so with a director / producer, or a producer that directs, they're wearing 2 hats, which would actually be more of the yeoman, like the work of the film being made, whereas the executive producer is going to be counting the dollars and making sure that the distribution rights are there and all the business aspect of the movie. Sound about right?
Usually the executive producer is sitting in an office.
Gotcha.
For lack of a better way to put it, like when I was working at Millennium Films, I was EP on a ton of movies, and on most of them I didn't even take credit, but I was in charge of the cash flow and I was in charge of writing the checks, and the producer was reporting directly to me. And
I
that
see.
includes movies like The Expendables and Olympus Has Fallen, all those genre pictures that were made during the teens.
So you could technically be executive producer on 4 or 5 projects all at once, whereas a producer, they can't. They have to be on set doing the job. Okay, that
Right.
makes sense.
Producer is pretty much working a 12 to 14-hour day from the day the camera starts rolling till the day the camera stops rolling.
Wow. So you graduated law on Long Island and moved to California right away around 1986. Is that right?
Correct. I
Did you
graduated
al-
in 1986 and I moved to California immediately upon graduation.
did you always want to be a Hollywood lawyer, mogul, studio owner? What
I
was your?
always wanted to be in the entertainment industry, but my original background was in music.
Mhm.
And after being in LA for a couple of years and seeing how the music industry really worked and being a movie file, for lack of a better way to put it, I used to see movies 2, 3 a week. And if you count the ones I watch at home, 10 a week. I gradually transferred into movies as opposed to music. I still have a pretty strong music background, but I don't get involved too heavily in the music side of it.
The video game and music business can actually correlate quite well with movies and actually sometimes make even more money. Have you done the package, the 3 deal where you get the Top Gun soundtrack, the Top Gun movie, and the ride at Universal Studios type of thing?
Yeah, but the majority of the movies we've been involved with have been genre action movies, except for, like Mad Money's a comedy, and Mozart and the Whale's an art picture, and the movie I made with Brendan Fraser, Journey to the End of the Night, that's an art picture. But most of the movies I've been doing have been genre action movies, and they don't necessarily translate to video games or amusement park rides in the same way that a Marvel or a DC movie would.
The Transformers or Fast and Furious. Yeah, that makes sense. Although some of the great songs have come off of independent films. You get a Cody Johnson on there or a George Strait, like Pure Country. That works. You could sell that over and over again.
Yeah, we
Um,
had a really good deal on Reagan for the soundtrack. And
right. That John Denver, right? John Denver at the end.
then we released the second movie, songs inspired, a second soundtrack album, songs inspired by the movie Reagan,
So there
which
are ways to
included
cash
songs that were
in.
not actually in the movie.
Oh, but they were just inspired by. Okay. So you can cash in a couple times. That sounds good. I remember very clearly like the 007 movies when they would actually come out and then they would end up on a video game and the video games would sell millions and millions of dollars worth of video games and the movie just did okay. So it was, you kind of had 2 or 3 different vehicles out of one, which is
Yeah,
fantastic.
the only experience we had with that in my Millennium days was Expendables and the Rambo sequels we did.
I could see that being very popular. Yeah. Oh, Rambo. Okay, you did those.
We didn't do the first three, we did the last two.
Okay.
And now I know Millennium is doing a third one, but it's an origination story that takes place before the first movie.
A
With
prequel
a
to the Rambo.
19-year-old kid in Vietnam being Rambo. It's not Stallone.
Okay. Yes, well, that has been around my entire life. So Stallone has been an amazing vehicle maker. So you were a specialist in representing not only the above the line elements, like I said, such as actors, writers, producers, and directors, but also aspects of motion picture and TV production from development through financing and distribution. Money and distribution. That's really what it's all about, right?
It's hard to explain in simple forms, but most producers never produce a movie because they never get it. The simplest way to raise the money is to attach a really strong creative package. Once you have your script that you're happy with as a producer, you then have to go out and hire a director. And once you have a director, you have to cast the movie. If the majority of people who want to get into the movie business never get that far because they think you have to raise the money first. And it's not so much raising the money as it is casting. Because if you cast recognizable names and movie stars, the money usually comes. And most people think you have to get the money first. And that's not the way it works in the real world. In the highly independent world outside of Los Angeles, New York, and the movie making centers, that might be the way, $500,000 movie gets made, but that's not the way a 10, 15, $20 million movie gets made.
Interesting. So let's say, I don't know if this is a good case sample, but let's say Reagan. So nobody could have done it like Dennis Quaid. He looks like him. He was the right age. He did a great job. Penelope Ann Miller too as Nancy. They were attached, let's say, before the money came flying in to actually make the darn thing. Because I know it took a long time, but I would have
Mark
thought,
Joseph and John Sullivan had been working on the movie since before 2008. I got involved around 2011, 2012, and for years and years and years, nothing was happening until we attached Dennis Quaid. And then once we attached Dennis Quaid, all the money started coming in.
I see. And what made him decide this was the time for him?
It took a lot of convincing. I mean, he really was afraid to play Reagan for a long time. And then at some point, Mark got on the phone with him and got him to commit.
Interesting. And he was afraid probably because taking on the role of a conservative icon would hurt his career, so to speak. Maybe 10 years ago he wasn't willing to, but now more likely he would.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
also he's come out pretty much as a conservative since then. So he's not really one to be too concerned about that at this point, I guess.
Yeah. When everybody's all American wasn't, I guess, political so much as it was just American. We liked America back then. This time it was Reagan, and that is certainly pipe polarizing.
And it was
So
still a controversial movie. The left came down on it pretty hard,
he did.
even though we made a conscious effort to not always put him in a good light.
Yeah, he was here in Franklin, Tennessee, and literally said, "This is not a political movie. This is a movie about heroes and whatever." And it's like, yeah, the left didn't want to hear that. They were going to make a thing out of no. Now, if they made a Jimmy Carter movie, they probably would have lined up for weeks to get tickets. So maybe that could be the
I
sequel.
don't know about Jimmy Carter. I don't think anybody liked him.
They try to resurrect him every once in a while. So you were serving as associate producer on three independent features, Motel Blue, and then 21 films later, you're still going. Do you love your life as a producer, or do you prefer executive producer?
I Being a producer, executive producer, and lawyer are so intertwined that it's all really two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's the business aspect of making movies. It's not the producer is more creative than an executive producer and a lawyer. But I found that being a lawyer, I can do a lot more of the producing stuff that strictly creative producers have no idea how to do.
Hmm.
So
So you have your artistic brain and your business brain, and they come together, and that's why you've been so successful. Whereas somebody who only has one of the two, probably going to spin their wheels
yeah,
for
it's really
decades.
hard to make a deal on a movie if you don't understand how the deals work.
Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah,
I
or
mean, and
you were creative.
contrary to
You
popular
created
belief,
deals that didn't exist. I want to talk about that in a second. Um,
contrary to popular belief, most movies do not lose money. There are, mega losses that you hear about and you read about in the paper all the time. But if you know how to properly finance and budget a movie, chances are you're going to be within 5 to 10% of what you spend on 90% of the time.
so, for example, Disney, the Snow White, they had a huge budget, came out, didn't make it back in receipts that we know of, maybe internationally ultimately. But you're saying, had Disney done a good deal, and maybe they even did, they didn't really lose as much as Variety magazine liked to tell everybody they
Well,
took
no,
it.
they might lose it in the theatrical aspect, but they'll get most of it back in 3 to 5 years. Now, that's a case of what could be considered a colossal bomb. I mean, that movie, I don't know if it will ever make back its budget because it cost, including advertising, probably close to 350, $400 million, and it did nothing. But, your average 20, $25 million movie, or even your average $50 million movie that does 50 million in the box office will eventually be profitable.
Because of streaming and like we talked about other properties like soundtrack,
Mm.
you can start doing the math and start making some back and not take 100% loss. You never make 100% loss. Okay, unless it's just terrible. So did you find over those decades that you were there, which is really the heyday of the film industry, really, like a blurring of the lines between what used to be very clear between an attorney, agent, manager, and publicist working on behalf of talent?
Publicist is a completely different job. That job is really has no similarities to producing agenting or lawyering.
But
An
have you
agent is
noticed that
basically
recently
just a
they've
lawyer
started
without
taking
the
on that
license.
role? Sorry, have you noticed they've started taking on each other's roles a little bit? I've seen publicists that really make the decisions for the talent,
I don't know if the publicists do as much as the managers do. I
them
mean,
for sure.
the publicist might tell an actor, don't do this because, but the decision to say yes or no is pretty much comes down to the money and the part. And the publicists don't really get involved in that so much. I mean, unless it's a really controversial movie and they say, don't do this.
And what about the agent?
The agent works with the manager. I mean, they're pretty much interchangeable. I mean, the major difference is one is licensed to procure jobs for uh, talent, and the other is not licensed. But do offers come to managers? This is often they come to agents, of course.
And do you see a move away from agents representing talent? Have some of these folks said, you're not getting me the work because I'm conservative or I'm outspoken or whatever we disagree on, and I'll just do it myself and they're just fine without them? Or do you think, well, no, agents are actually vital?
Uh, a person who's got a name doesn't really need an agent. I mean, there's a lot of actors out there that don't have agents. Some don't have managers. The big difference between an agent and a manager, an agent might have 1,000 clients or 500 clients. A manager is usually down 15, 20 clients and gives a lot more personal service. When the phone calls come in the middle of the night, most of the time they'll go to the manager.
Mm, they know them better. I remember agents a wall of file cabinets, A through Z, and they have no way would they know the young up and coming starlet or whatever. But a manager, they're going to get to know them a little better because there's only 10 of them. They know what they're doing tomorrow. They know where they are this week. They can get in touch with them real quick. And so, what about the attorney role where you fit in? How does attorney, agent, manager, publicist play nice together regarding the talent?
It was regarding,
The
you talking
talent. Yeah, like
talking
just
about the
representing a Dennis
representation
Quaid
of
or yeah.
talent or being on the other side of the talent.
Well, however you do it day to
Because the
day. So
majority of the work I've done has been representing producers negotiating with talent.
okay, so there
I
you go.
have a
So
couple of clients who are directors, but most of what I do is I represent companies and I deal with the lawyers for the actors.
and the lawyers act like the talent agent or the manager, or do they do
The
what the manager
lawyers,
agent says they should
the,
do, or do the talent have say? Do they even have any say in this?
the lawyers get involved once the basic deal has been made. And they get involved more in definitions of grosses and definitions of net profits and bonus structures and when participations kick in the waterfall for the revenue from the movie. Agents don't really get involved that much in that. They make the basic deal X dollars up front, X percent of the net or X percent of the gross, and then the lawyer comes in and you argue over all the definitions.
Interesting. Okay. It's hard to imagine anything ever gets past the conference room, but that's awesome. So that leads me to the strike. What are the legal ramifications of AI generated talent, such as this new AI actress, Tilly Norwood?
This is getting a lot of controversy in the last actually 24 hours because prior to that, nobody had ever heard of this. And I have one client who's a fairly well-versed CGI expert who's done CGI on probably 200 movies, run the department, not physically did the computer work, but run the department. And he thinks that this is the way the industry's going. In fact, he's even saying that you don't even need directors of photography anymore. Within 3 to 5 years, 40% of the jobs in the movie business could all be gone and everything will be done on computers, including the actors. And from what I hear, I haven't seen it yet, but from what I hear, this Tilly Norwood doesn't look like a computer generated image at all. She looks like a real actress.
Yeah, I thought it was a real actress, to be honest with you. I actually wanted to look up where she was born and nowhere. So how will AI affect future legal issues in show business?
It might become a lot simpler. I mean, if everything's done on a computer, you need one contract instead of 25. You just have to hire a good company to do it all. Then, will you even need a director at some point? Probably in the same way you need a director for animation to tell the story. But other than
So
that, who knows? And, every time there's been a major change in the movie industry, there's been massive loss of jobs. But there's been always a corresponding increase in other jobs. Like, for example, when the industry went from film to digital cameras, and when the industry went from cutting on film to cutting on a computer, things changed completely. I mean, like the negative cutter just completely disappeared. Most of the labs like Photochem and Deluxe are out of business now.
sure.
But everything's being done in different places and by different people. From what I'm being told with the people that are aware of the way artificial intelligence is going, that might not be the case this time. There might be the 40% loss of jobs with no corresponding increase in other jobs.
Oh, so not a net zero after ultimately switching your talent skill from analog to digital, but actually there is nothing we don't need you anymore. Certainly not a hairstylist, let's say, if you are animated. So let's say like a movie like Top Gun. $2 billion for the sequel, right? Everyone loved it in the 80s. Soundtrack we talked about. Who owns the image of the character like Tom Cruise plays Maverick? Him, because it's his face and body, and he created that role, or Paramount, I guess, that owns the rights, which is now Larry Ellison, Oracle, TikTok, et cetera, Skydance.
There's a legal rule called the right of publicity. The right of publicity means that you own your own image. So your image cannot be used without your permission. You own your name. Your name cannot be used without your permission. So whether they can make a Top Gun 3 with Tom Cruise's image, that's only going to be if Tom Cruise permits it. Now, can they make a Top Gun 3 with a AI actor playing Maverick that's not Tom Cruise? That depends on the contractual language in his contract for the Top Gun movies.
That's interesting because they did this with The Matrix. They actually animated it and they had a Keanu Reeves type character, but I don't think he was the voiceover of it even. So you can get a franchise,
That
I
was
guess.
probably done with contracts that were negotiated before all this stuff was even in anybody's mind.
So basically, the next time they want to do a Rambo legacy of, spanning 40 years, they better know day one, like, okay, if you ever animate it, if you ever do a sequel or a prequel or a quit, like so this is what happened with Creed, right? They kicked Stallone completely out, but he created that character and literally wrote it. Okay, all right, I see where it's going. So the copyright on the earliest version of Mickey Mouse from the 1928 film Steamboat Willie just expired last year, January 1st,
Correct.
entering the public domain now. So I could use it. I can make a t-shirt out of it. I can do whatever I want. It's publicly issued. So
As long as it's an exact replica of the Steamboat Willie or the name.
so if I manipulate it, I'm taking creative license that you can't do that. But if I literally went online and took a picture of it and put it on a t-shirt, no worries. I don't know anybody
Well,
anymore.
you could manipulate it and do a derivative work based on the original,
Oh,
but
you
you
can.
can't copy the Mickey Mouse from Fantasia.
Right. Not yet. Someday
Right.
maybe, but not yet. Okay. So literally, if I was making a movie and Steamboat Willie decided to walk by, that's cool. I won't have to pay anybody for that.
Oh,
Did
there's
did
probably been 20 Mickey Mouse horror movies made in the last 3 years.
and there's also been X-rated ones I've seen. Well, I haven't seen, I've heard of them. But did that issue play a role in the strike negotiations because of that?
Oh,
Because of Mickey Mouse?
that was one of the major reasons for the strike, and I didn't see that one was even resolved. I mean, at some point, it just came down to the money and the bonuses. And, SAG is really taking a hard line on the AI. And they came out yesterday with all sorts of statements about Tilly. But at the end of the day, there's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, if somebody wants to make, let's analogize it to animation. You can't stop somebody from making a cartoon. Can you stop somebody from making an AI movie? It's basically animation when you look at it, when you think about it.
Totally. I mean,
The
the
difference
movie
being
Heavy
making the
Metal,
animation look like live action.
the movie Heavy Metal had a lot of characters, or I'm thinking of like Cool World with Brad Pitt, where they put a human in. They didn't have to put the human in. The whole thing could just be remade, redone with somebody else's software code. I guess you could call it something else. And what would they do? I mean, what did the strike resolve in terms of, I guess, what used to be called copyright infringement?
Yeah, well, right now the Copyright Office is taking a very interesting position on this. The Copyright Office is saying that anything that is created by AI is not copyrightable because there's no intellectual thought that goes into it.
So there's no
So,
intellectual property because there's no intelligence. It's just a spitting out a gobbledygook, I guess, X's and O's or zeros and
correct.
ones. Okay,
So,
interesting. So if you made a Top Gun or if you made a Rambo, you you're giving it away for free.
well, you're not giving it away for free. You're still going to sell it, but can you stop someone from copying it?
Right.
That's the issue. I mean, they've taken the current position they've taken is that anything created by AI is not copyrightable.
It's a lot like Napster. When you digitize a music that somebody had a copyright on, like Metallica, and you peer to peer share it all over the place, there's no one to really go after to say you're infringing on my copyright or my intellectual property. So it's kind of bogus. Same thing with software. China wants to download Microsoft's Office. Well, what are you going to do? They got it. So what about the strike before that? So the movie Reagan, showed the troubles with the Teamsters way back in the 50s, but the strike in 2023, Writers Guild of America, they represent about 11,500 screenwriters, went on strike over a labor dispute. Did that end in favor of the writers, or do studios always win? And what's to say I can't create an AI screenplay and I'm not in the Writers Guild of America?
You can't stop that either. It's exactly the same. The two 2023 strikes, the SAG strike and the Writers Guild strike, were basically one strike occurring at the same time with different personnel. They were both regarding streamer residuals and streamer plays and AI. AI was actually, at the end of the day, became a minor part of the strike. The major part of the strike was payment by the streamers for reuse fees.
So
Because,
if I see it on Prime or if I see it on Netflix, they wanted a residual just like you would if it was on HBO once upon a time.
right. Or
And
if it was
did that
sold
resolve in their
in a
favor, or did
video.
they say no, no resolution? We're not going to
The
do that.
big loss was the DVD and the video residuals.
Hmm.
The TV residuals are still there. They're smaller than they used to be, but the streamers are saying we don't have to pay residuals because we don't. How do we determine how many times the thing is played? It's not like when something is sold on a DVD or something is played on HBO 50 times, that's 50 plays. You get paid for 50 plays according to the formula.
So
A
how does
streamer,
BMI do it with music? BMI can nail a coffee shop or a cab driver in Bangladesh and they owe 10 cents. Like how do they do it, but the movies can't figure it
they
out?
end up making a contract. But here's the issue. When Netflix puts something on their platform and 2 million people watch it, is that one play or 2 million plays? Because when something is shown on HBO, if 2 million people watch it, that's one play.
Right. So it's not like pay per view where you click it and now you're paying and I pay a la carte. They're saying we gave the license to Netflix. They could watch it a billion times, but it's the one license.
Right. But it's also, and of course, the unions want it counted as sales. They want every play to be counted as a sale. But then the streamer argument comes back as that's not the way it works with HBO. Why should HBO get to have 2 million people watch it and you only pay once for one play?
But they're happy to say like 2 million people watched it as opposed to we had
But they
one.
don't even release their numbers. In
Right.
fact, with ASCAP and BMI, Netflix does not release the number of plays. They pay based on a formula that was negotiated with ASCAP and BMI. But when you get your royalty statement from Netflix, it says one play.
Ooh, okay. Well, there you
Whereas
go.
when you get your royalty statement from BMI, from HBO, or from Tubi, it gives you the gross amount of plays and they pay per play.
Huh.
Now, Netflix is supposed to be paying per play, but they don't release the numbers. They made some kind of deal with ASCAP and BMI where they don't have to release the numbers to anybody.
So unlike
They don't want
Spotify,
anyone to know their algorithms.
which knows if you listen to 1 second of it or the whole song or 10
Well, so
times,
does Netflix,
but they won't
but
tell you.
they won't tell anyone.
And nobody seems
So
to be able to
that
shake
was the
that out.
primary reason for the 2023 strikes. And what was finally negotiated as one of the main things with the writers and the actors was what they called a one-time royalty. And the way it was defined, and again, don't hold me to this, I'm not reading the language right now, but to my memory, the way it was defined was if you have 20% of the subscribers watch the show within 90 days of release, the writer gets a one-time royalty of, I think it was a third of his writing fee or half of his writing fee.
Certainly makes the case for one writer, not 4 or 5, because like a band from the
Well, they
70s,
have
you
to
have to
split it
split the
up.
money.
But what happens was, in reality, that actually came to be known as the Taylor Sheridan rule. Because how many people, even if it's one of the most successful shows on Netflix or Paramount Plus or Amazon Prime or HBO Max, how many people will 20% of the subscribers watch in the first 90 days? It's basically Taylor Sheridan and maybe 3 or 4 other writers. Everybody else is never going to get that bonus.
Wow. That's right. Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 almost. So what's the hardest legal challenge comes to mind that you faced between either a studio or distribution or talent and getting a movie actually made into the finish line up on the screen? Any deal breakers stand out for you?
Shooting in the United States is becoming an issue, is probably the biggest issue because of the union's controls of the industry. And it's not, you can't make a movie without SAG for all intents and purposes. You can make a movie without the Writers Guild or the Directors Guild. It's hard if you start getting into higher budget stuff, but if you're in the $3 to $5 million range, chances are you can make a movie without a director or a writer in the union. But you can't make a movie without SAG. The problem with shooting in the United States is IATSE and the Teamsters. Whereas when you shoot overseas, anywhere else in the world, you don't have to deal with those two unions. And the costs of shooting an IATSE movie are 4 to 5 times what it would cost for the equivalent level of crew in Southeast Asia or in Europe.
And what's IATSE stand for? International Teamsters Union?
International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. It's all the below the line people.
Okay.
All the below the line people except the drivers and Teamsters.
The ones you work with.
I mean, and you hear the usual argument, well, you're exploiting the foreign labor. Exploiting the foreign labor would be if you were paying them below a middle-class wage in that country. But if a middle-class wage in that country is $500 a week, and you're paying the same IATSE guy $3,000 a week for the same work, you multiply that by 100 people, that's a lot of money over the course of 6-7 weeks.
It could be the difference between having a budget and not having a budget. Absolutely. Well, that's self-defeating. Did you ever watch a star? I'm thinking like Tom Selleck. He didn't get Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford did, for example. Did you ever watch a deal fall apart over egos? Not that Tom did that, but his life would be very different had he been indie. You know what I'm saying? Like, did you ever see a perfect on paper project fall apart because of egos like that over contracts and
I've
unions and
seen deals fall apart where, and it's usually with people who are new to the industry, where they own a script or they want to direct a movie and they think that, they should get 50% of the profits because some idiot filled their head with the fact that, I'm selling my first script, I'm going to get 50% of the profits. And deals go away. I mean, I try to tell my clients whenever I do represent talent, I try to tell them if you have leverage, you negotiate. If you don't have any leverage, you take what's there. I mean, I've seen people blow script sales over $5,000-$10,000.
Mm.
They think they wrote Gone with the Wind and they won't take an offer. And 5 years later, they still have the script and nobody bought it.
what
That
is
kind of stuff happens all the time.
I can imagine. I heard something like 95% of scripts don't get made. So there's a lot of supply out
More than
there.
95%.
More than 90.
I
So what we
mean,
see on the screen is a subset of 5%.
there's literally thousands of scripts floating around Hollywood. Most of them stink and will never get made. Let's say 10-20% of them are good, but there's only 500 movies being made a year, and there are thousands of scripts. And out of the 500 movies that are being made, probably 400 of them, the writer was hired knowing that the movie was going to get made. So that means 100 movies a year are being made by spec scripts that were written without anybody attached. Like, I'll give you an example. When we wrote Expendables 1, well, no, Expendables 1 we bought. When we wrote Expendables 2, we knew we were making Expendables 2. So that script, the day that the writer was hired, we knew the movie was being made.
So
That's different
your
than a
odds were
script that's
100%. Yeah.
that's different than a script that's floating around Hollywood. I mean, if you look at, there's a thing called the Blacklist. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have.
The Blacklist is a list of the best unproduced screenplays. And it comes out every year. The top 10 scripts on that list, maybe one of them will ever get made.
And every year
These
it
are the
accumulates.
top
So
10.
from 10 to 100 to 1,000. Yeah.
This is the top 10 unproduced screenplays. If only one of them gets made, just imagine all of the other scripts that are floating around Hollywood that will never see the light of day. There are
999.
literally
Yeah.
thousands of them.
So what is the biggest mistake filmmakers make in your experience that make movie making harder than it has to be? Is there a pitfall they should know about to avoid disaster from the get-go?
Well, like I said a few minutes ago, when somebody offers you your first deal, you take it. That's
Even if it's
the biggest mistake. And I know probably 50 people that have been walking around Hollywood as producers, writers, or directors who have passed on projects and have never gotten another offer. Now, again,
because of the reputation of being somebody who would pass. Yeah.
no, because you've never done anything. I
Oh,
mean,
the credit would have given them better
yeah.
momentum than to say I've still not done anything. Ah, yeah.
I mean, if you're Tom Cruise, you're getting at least one offer a week. You're only going to make a movie once a year. So he's going to pass on probably 50 to 100 scripts a year. And keep in mind, he knows he's making Mission Impossible's next. So that's a year that he's not accepting anything that just came in the door.
Awesome. What do you think the future of LA is? Yeah, you've been there 30 years now, I think, if my math is right. Next year,
40.
yeah, I'm sorry, next year is 40 years. You've seen its politics and homeless and costs skyrocket, including, looking at Hollywood as a cash register for the state. Rob Lowe said it's cheaper to take a whole crew to Ireland than across the street from his office in Burbank. Is that true? And is it uneconomical these days to work there?
Well, that was what I just said a few minutes ago. It's like $500 a week versus $3,000 a week.
But people still do
And
it, right?
when you factor in Ireland, where there's a tax credit, it becomes even cheaper. So maybe in Ireland, the 3,000 a week is 2,000 a week, as opposed to Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. But when you take that 2,000 a week and you get a 40% tax credit on it, you're down to 1,200 a week. So you're not exactly at the 500 a week, but you're still substantially lower. And when you factor in the travel, hotel, and per diem costs, it still comes out lower. I've never done a budget where it was cheaper to shoot in the United States than it was to shoot overseas, even with the tax incentive states like Georgia, Louisiana, Ohio, Oklahoma. Even
So
with those tax incentive states, it's still cheaper to go overseas.
So you don't think what Texas is doing now and Nevada with Wahlberg and a lot of states like Georgia was the king for a while. Even California just topped off theirs to keep people home, basically. You don't think that's even still incentive enough to stay? It's still a no-brainer to go international for production?
Okay, let's forget about the salary for a second. Pension, health, and welfare, and Social Security and Medicare. In most countries, you don't pay them at all. So add that on top of the salary.
It's like 40%, right?
Well, pension, health, and welfare for IATSE is 21% of the salary. Another 7.5, 8% for Social Security and Medicare. So you're up to a 30% premium on the $3,000 a week. So now you're up to $4,000 a week. And you're paying the guy in Southeast Asia $500 a week.
Wow.
So even if you got to pay $100 a night or $200 a night for a hotel room for 10 people, you're still at substantial savings. Now you go to a country like Thailand where there's a 20% tax credit on top of that.
I mean, if you're an investor, you want your money treated well. It's a no-brainer, like I thought. So Texas, it's nice that they're throwing 2 billion around. Georgia did that 2 billion a year for 10 years, and they still said, see, we're going to the UK. Do you know anything about what soured the Georgia deal?
The UK tax credit, I think now is 40% of 80% of your UK spend. So it's 32% on top of the slightly lower salaries. The salaries in the UK are high.
Yeah, I
They're
would think
not
so.
like Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia,
Hotels
but
are
they're
higher too.
still 2,000 a week instead of 4,000 a week. And then you get a 32% tax credit on top of that.
Makes sense. That's Disney did the math. That made sense. Have you seen The
Makes a
Devil in
lot
the
of sense when you're doing a
Details?
$150 million movie.
For sure. Yeah, we're talking 30% of 150 million. It's a lot of money. And it could go into the budget and you can make a better movie. Have you seen the Devil in the Details? I know, like we're talking about Texas, they give money for using veterans in state. But, like I said, Georgia lost Disney for the UK. So whatever incentives they had, they're apparently not as attractive anymore. Uh, so that soured Hollywood on Georgia. But do you think Texas, they also say if you use veterans, do you think there's going to be a big rush towards veteran actor movies made in Texas, or is Texas really just
I'm
advertising it
sure it'll
open
bring
for
some, but it's not going to bring the big movies because, again, we haven't talked about another factor. You don't have to pay residuals when you shoot overseas.
residuals? Tell us about that.
The union structure in the United States is that you pay 5.4% of, okay, we're talking about theatrical features, not TV, because the TV residual structure is really complicated. On a theatrical feature, you have to pay IATSE and the Teamsters 5.4% of all revenue that comes from non-theatrical markets.
So once it's out of the theaters, you owe 5-something% to the union.
5.4% of all revenue before break even. So if the movie is $10 million in the hole after theatrical, you're given 5.4% to IATSE and the Teamsters before you ever hit break even. SAG is 3.5%. The DGA is 1.5%. The Writers Guild is 1%. The Musicians Union is 1%.
That's a heck of a hurdle to get over just to make your money back.
That's why people don't speak the United States. I mean, you're pretty much saddled.
I just love getting this on tape because it's like everyone's like, oh, I can make a movie with an iPhone. This is going to be amazing. It's like, well, good luck because that's just the beginning.
I mean, you make them for under $500,000. You're probably not dealing with any unions except SAG.
Which makes sense for the independent market to thrive because they can avoid this, just like the international market will thrive because Hollywood just cannot possibly do this sustainably, let's just say. But we've seen what they would do with GM. The unions took GM into bankruptcy because they would not budge. They will take Hollywood into bankruptcy. They don't care if movies don't get made. They're making all these residuals from the last 100 years of films. So you once told me something that I'll never forget, I hope, assuming I don't go crazy. If you want to make money in movies, there are only two kinds that sell: action and horror. You still feel that way?
In the independent world, yes. If you're making independent, non-theatrical movies, those are the ways to almost guarantee your movie's going to break even. Again, there are flukes where a $2 million horror movie will make $100 million, or a $2 million horror movie will lose some money. But a $2 million horror movie, if you lose more than $500,000, something is really wrong.
Yeah, if caught on fire or something.
Yeah.
So then how Christian is the Christian film genre? You know, I saw David's series and a lot of it isn't in the Bible, but entertaining, just not biblically accurate. Would that be a third possible one or no?
The faith-based market's a completely different market because it's almost entirely based on the United States. The foreign sales in the faith-based market are minute. And there are certain numbers where you're safe. I mean, you'll never make a faith-based movie for over $10 million.
Except for Passion.
When I say never, there's always the exception.
Yeah.
But for the most, like, I think Mel Gibson's going to make The Resurrection for $200 million. But for the most part, you never make a faith-based movie for more than $10 million. And you stick to the rules, which means action is okay, cussing and sex are not okay. There's a certain group of rules that you have to follow.
Like a template that makes it a faith-based film.
As long as you fit in those rules and you keep the budget within the constraints of that market, you'll probably do okay. And again, I say this all the time, there's always the exception. Like the original God's Not Dead cost $1 million and made $60 million on the box office alone. That's the fluke.
That was the lure that got everyone else to try it and lose their shirts.
War Room, I think, even cost less than $1 million. And that made, I think, close to 60 million as well.
War Room.
That's the fluke.
Yeah.
But you make a faith-based movie for 3 to 4 million, you will probably make a profit.
Do you think that's a trend? Kind of like the Western comes and goes every few decades, like Unforgiven and Dances with Wolves were in the 90s, 90, 92, and not again until like Yellowstone Horizon 30 years later. Hard to believe. Or do faith-based movies have staying power with Angel and Lionsgate throwing money at it? And I guess MGM, The House of David, $200 million so far in their budget.
Well, they're being made specifically, we didn't want to get into politics for the red states. The coasts are not going to see those faith-based movies. In fact, I can give you an example. There was a movie called October Baby about 10, 15 years ago. It was about a teenage girl that was a survivor of an abortion. Her mother tried to abort her and she lived, and she went into a foster home, found out about this afterwards and wanted to find her original mother. This movie was done by the Kendrick brothers, I think, who are one of the top directors in the faith-based world. And it made a ton of money on almost nothing budget. I was on the phone with my sister, who lives in a suburb of Daytona Beach. And she said, I just saw this really great movie called October Baby. You should go see it. And I said to my sister, I've never heard of this movie. What are you talking about? She said, it's in all the theaters here in rural Florida. I've never heard of it. And it was not released anywhere in the LA metropolitan area. 2 weeks later, I'm on a business trip in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I have 4 hours to kill before I had to be at the airport on Sunday afternoon. And I said, okay, I'll go to a movie because I got nothing else to do. And I went to the movie theater and they were playing October Baby. And I would have never gone to see it except for the fact that my sister told me to see it. And it was actually a really good movie. And this movie was not even marketed in any of the top 40 markets in the United States. Wasn't released, wasn't sold, made a ton of money. Made like $12-15 million on $1 million investment.
Wow.
So the majority of Hollywood that's making the $150 million Marvel movies, the DC movies, the Star Wars movies, the what used to be the romantic comedies, but nobody really makes them anymore. They're not even thinking about this market. So the niche is there and it will always be there because that 50% of the country wants to go see movies that they like. So getting back to your question, will this go away? Faith-based movies will never go away, but they will rarely break out into what's called the 4-quadrant movie.
And that's fast. That is amazing. So do you think streaming could change that? Because, big screen action explosions or fear of a boogeyman jumping up behind you in a theater kind of goes away on a cell phone, a small screen at home. Could we see more dramas and Shakespeare in Love types in a new era of streaming and digital?
Well, if you look at what Netflix is making, they're pretty much emulating the studio formula, but they are making some romantic comedies. They made a whole bunch of movies with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. So what used to be the big romantic comedy seems to be going into the TV world now.
Right. If it can translate on a small screen, we don't need to blow stuff up.
I mean,
Wait for Mission
when was the last time
Impossible.
you saw an Adam Sandler movie in a theater?
No, Happy Gilmore 2 or whatever it was. Yeah. But then of
Or
course
even an
I
Eddie
had to go,
Murphy movie.
but I
Even
had to go
Beverly
see
Hills Cop
Mission.
4 went on directly onto a streamer.
You're right. I didn't even know about that. But yeah, I did see Mission Impossible in the theater, and I did see the last Marvel movie in the theater. So what's next for you? Are you one of those guys that aspires to direct? I didn't see any
I
director
have
credits.
no interest in that whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. I'm
Been around
working
too
on
long.
actually a faith-based movie right now that I want to make before I retire. I don't want to give too much away about it, but it's not quote the type of faith-based movie we've been talking about. It's a historical drama based on a Catholic saint. So it's a true story. It takes place in the mid 1800s. And if I can get that made, then I'll be really happy that, if that's the last movie I make, I won't complain.
Okay, that's something to aspire to. I'll have to keep an eye out for the name DeMartini produced. I hate to mention this, but it really starting to piss me off as a movie lover, like you said you were and are. Your last movie, 2024, Old Guy, with awesome actor Christopher Waltz. You were executive producer, got a 95 popcorn. So congratulations. That means ticket buyers actually liked it or whatever streamers. But a 26 tomato meter. Rotten Tomatoes has become like a mean girl website. 500 plus ratings, 95 means more to me. What do you make of the ratings industry?
Take a look at Reagan.
That was 18. They got an 18 on 5,098. I mean, I think that's a record, 80 points. It's a joke. Great movie.
Yeah, no, the critics hated it, absolutely hated it. And it got a 95% on the tomato meter.
98.
98.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'm not a
so
lawyer.
what does
You
that tell
are.
you? That tells you that the critics are not the audience.
They're not the audience. They never have been. But and like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but you are. So it seems like Hobbs Act 18 USC 1951, interference of commerce. I bet Mark Joseph from Reagan and you could slap them with a class action suit. I mean, have you ever considered such a thing? Because there really are spiking movies that should be
Well,
seen.
I think there was definitely evidence that certain social media sites were, how could I put this? Were doing things to get people not to go see Reagan.
Throttling it, shadow banning it, steering people away from it, not directing
Correct.
it to people who would
And
be
you being
interested.
the internet person, you know those words a lot better than me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but basically doing their best to make sure it wasn't seen or people are aware of it. Instead of saying something bad about it, just don't say anything at all.
I mean, if you looked at the tracking for Reagan, it was supposed to do 3 to 5 million opening weekend. It did 8. So it more than doubled the tracking. And when it hit the 31 million box office, everyone was totally shocked. Now, if that movie had not been shadow banned or had not been destroyed by the mainstream critics, it probably does $100 million. But how are you ever going to prove that in a court?
No. Well, if you could literally show the fraud of some kind of software that was filtering it out, then yeah, but I don't know. But as far as those ratings are concerned, well, I guess those are the free speech of the critics. They can say whatever they want. And the same with the award shows, just a way to push, one last gasp of junky stuff that used to work in the 20s and 30s if Marilyn Monroe or Jimmy Stewart was in it, but maybe not so important for sales anymore. Well, Frank, this has been amazing for me. Thank you so much. We're at the end here, so tell our listeners where they can find you, hire you as their lawyer. I know you don't do social media, but you got to have some kind of website out
Well,
there.
no, I have a Facebook page, but that's about it. I don't. I most of my clients come specifically. I guess we're off.
No, you're there.
Oh, okay. Most of my clients come specifically from referrals at this point because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah, they can find you. You're on IMDb too. It just
I'm on
just
IMDb and I'm on like Facebook.
and if you forget, just most movies look for producer. You're probably there somehow, some way. Well, thank you again for coming on. Hang on, folks. I will be right back.
If country ain't country, then this ain't gonna work. Oh, there ain't no gold in this new Nashville dirt.
All right, thanks for coming back. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That is how we grow and keep this content free for you. Now, the Heartland Journal News. Evidence of police underreporting in major U.S. cities by Steve Abramowitz, 2005, September the 2. Source, heartlandjournal.com. The Federal Bureau of Investigation Uniform Crime Report and the Bureau of Justice Statistics National Crime Victimization Survey represent the two primary sources of crime data in the United States. Yet they often paint divergent pictures of criminal activity. The UCR, established in 1930, compiles data on crimes reported to and recorded by law enforcement agencies across the country. It focuses on Part 1 offenses like murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson, providing per capita rates based on incidents known to police. In contrast, the NCVS, launched in 1973, is a household survey that interviews approximately 240,000 individuals aged 12 and older annually about their experiences with victimization, regardless of whether the incidents were reported to authorities. This methodology captures unreported crimes, offering rates per household and including offenses like simple assault and personal theft that the UCR may exclude or undercount. That's the key word here. The the persistent gap between these data sets highlights a critical issue, underreporting, while the NCVS consistently shows higher victimization rates, revealing that only 41.5% of violent crimes and 31.8% of property crimes were reported to police in 2022. The UCR relies solely on law enforcement submitted data, which can be incomplete due to victim reluctance or police practices. Reasons for this dark figure of crime includes victims' fear of retaliation, distrust in police, or perceptions that incidents are too trivial. However, A growing body of evidence suggests that police departments themselves contribute to underreporting by failing to record incidents accurately, misclassifying crimes, or not submitting data to the FBI. This is particularly evident in cities like Baltimore, Seattle, Memphis, and Chicago, where systemic issues in policing distort national crime statistics, undermine public trust, and hinder effective policy responses. By examining these cases, my essay here argues that police underreporting infiltrates the UCR NCVS gap, masking the true extent of crime and allowing political narratives to flourish without factual grounding. At a national level, the UCR NCVS discrepancy underscores structural flaws in crime data collection. For instance, the UCR excludes commercial crimes, arson in some comparisons, and offenses against children under 12, while the NCVS omits homicide and focuses on non-fatal victimizations. More alarmingly, recent transitions to the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System have exacerbated gaps, with nearly one-third of U.S. police agencies failing to report data in 2022, leaving 25% of the population unrepresented. This incomplete reporting isn't just technical. It's tied to resources shortages and institutional biases. A Pew Research analysis confirms that most crimes go unreported, with clearance rates as low as 36.7% for violent offenses and 12.1% for property crimes. Emergency department studies reveal even starker underreporting. In one urban area, 78% of violent injuries treated in hospitals were unknown to police, far exceeding survey estimates. Did you catch that? 78%. Analysis like Jeff Asher note that underreporting may be worsening in cities with staffing shortages where slower response times discourage victims from pursuing formal reports. These dynamics not only widen the UCR and CVS divide, but also enable misleading claims about crime trends. This is the point of my episode. As seen in discrepancies between reported drops in violence and persistent victimization rates. In Baltimore, police underreporting has been a chronic issue, contributing to an artificially low UCR profile compared to NCVS estimates. A 2023 report highlighted discrepancies in the Baltimore Police Department's crime data where past and present reporting methods failed to align, confusing even law enforcement leaders. The city's transition to NIBRS in 2022 led to apparent crime reductions, but critics argue this reflects underreporting rather than actual declines, as the new system demands more detailed documentation that overburdens officers may skip. A 2016 Department of Justice investigation found systemic biases, including excessive force and unconstitutional stops, which erode community trust and deter reporting. Media analysis suggests that Baltimore's violent crime rate, while down 40% since 2020 per UCR, ignores unreported incidents captured in NCVS surveys, particularly in marginalized neighborhoods where fear of police retaliation is high. This underreporting masks the city's true victimization burden, allowing officials to tout successes while NCVS data indicates persistent gaps. Seattle exemplifies how staffing crises amplify police underreporting, widening the UCR-NCVS chasm. The Seattle Police Department reported a 9% crime drop in 2023, but Chief Adrian Diaz cautioned that statistics are incomplete due to underreporting. With officers' numbers down significantly since 2019, response times have ballooned from 51 minutes, leading to fewer property crime calls, resulting in official reports as crimes give up when police arrive too late. A 2017 city audit revealed SPD's poor tracking of hate crimes, underreporting them substantially. NCVS data, which includes unreported assaults and thefts, shows higher crime victimization rates than UCR, particularly in areas affected by the 2020 CHOP-CHAZ zone, where crime surged but reporting lagged. Residents' frustration with slow responses further discouraged formal complaints, creating a feedback loop where UCR underestimates crime, while NCVS reveals the hidden toll. In Memphis, aggressive policing tactics have fostered underreporting, distorting UCR figures against NCVS insights. A 2024 DOJ report condemned the Memphis Police Department for excessive force, unlawful stops, and discrimination against Black residents, which undermines trust and reduces crime reporting. While MPD claims crime is at a 6-year low, with property offenses down 20%. Analysts link this to underreporting rather than prevention. All right, I think I made my case. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Frank DeMartini, for coming on the show and not charging me by the hour like a lawyer usually would. But seriously, for demystifying, they call it in film school, critical studies classes at USC Film School when I was there, and explaining to us how movies really get made. It's actually quite a miracle they ever get finished and up there on the screens, or anyone can make a dime off of it, especially in the independent world that I've been bouncing around in now for 3 years. No offense to Tennessee, but California really does know how to do this, and y'all don't. Yet, I'm trying. If I can look back and have made Tennessee the Heartland Entertainment Capital of the world, I'll have done a good thing. Stay tuned. That is it for this episode. That's all, folks. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God. Here's one of DeMartini's trailers, and if you stick around for bonus, it's Wednesday with Yappy. Bye.
I got lost in the woods. I saw smoke coming from the chimney.
How do I know you're not some goddamn psycho killer?
Do I look like a psycho killer to you?
Yes, you do. What if you come to find out that I'm very dangerous? Well, it must mean that God hates you.
Cup of coffee? My grandfather told me you can never be too careful in these woods. He told me it's beautiful, but it can also be dangerous.
He was right about that. There's all kind of death and beauty out here.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of HeartlandJournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.